Hello, everyone. Welcome to Inside the Birds Pregame live here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook on Delaware Ave, where Philly loves a winner. It's great to be with all of you. I'm Geoff Mosher from Inside the Birds alongside my co-host, Adam Caplan. With us, as usual, is our tape breakdown master, Greg Cosell. How you doing, Greg?
Jeff, what's happening this morning?
Are you lonely on that side?
I see Mr. Avant from the Michigan game last night. A good win. I'm sure he'll come in happy, but it was a late game.
It was a late game.
So
that's right. Jason Avant, former Eagles wide receiver, usually with us. He will be with us at some point today. He is coming back from Indianapolis, where the Big Ten championship game is. Jason is the sideline radio voice for the University of Michigan football team, so good for him. We will definitely get his insights on this game. We got a big game to break down today. The Eagles are home for the second week in a row for the first time this year.
Wow,
It's been a whole lot of home road
weird
for them. Yeah, they're coming off that 40-33 win over the Packers on last Sunday night. And of course, the Birds are 10-1 with a 2-game lead in the division going into this weekend's action. The Titans, who they play today, are coming off a 20-16 loss to their division rivals, division foes, the Cincinnati Bengals. However, they still lead the AFC South rather comfortably by 3 games entering this weekend at 7-4. So a very big matchup today. We're going to talk about it. We got people here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook. They're placing their bets. They're sitting in the leather seats. They're watching some early football analysis and some soccer. We got some World Cup soccer going on here. It is a great time always at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook. And of course here at Jack's Bar and Grill, we got food and drink specials that you are definitely going to want to come down and take advantage of. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us in the chat box your score prediction. I promise I will try to get to it. We were able to read some out last show. Interestingly, I find with these score predictions, it's always Eagles something, opponent something less. Nobody's really predicting, and they've all been right for the most part.
Well, they've only had one loss.
Yeah, that's right.
Only one loss.
Only one loss. It's funny how that works.
Yes, the people have spoken, and they have been
Though
correct.
you two gentlemen have picked against the Eagles this
Just
season,
one,
have you
just
not?
twice.
I think I
did twice.
Did I? I know I did, but I don't. I think
Was it
it
the
was only
Was
once.
it the first Washington?
Certainly not the game.
I
they
picked-
lost.
you picked the
I
first
I
one.
picked Minnesota to beat
First
them.
Minnesota game.
Right.
That's where we've been, not Washington.
Well, Minnesota. Oh, the Minnesota.
Right.
Okay.
I think that was the only time I picked them to lose.
Okay.
And then I did pick them to lose to the Packers, and people made fun of me, but that was a pretty close game there.
Right.
All right, we got a lot to break down with this Eagles-Titans game. We're going to get into the X's and O's of it, and we'll try to catch up with Jason when he gets in here. But I always like to start the show with a little bit of a big picture outlook. And Greg, I'll start with you. I'd like to focus on this Titans team that I find extraordinarily different than most teams.
Yep.
They are 7-4.
Yes.
Having a good season. I think it's fair to say when you compare their 53 to others, not only are they very injured, they have, I think, 15 guys on IR, but I would say that, in my estimation, the amount of difference makers they have compared to maybe the Eagles or the Bills or the Chiefs is less, I would think. But
I would agree.
why are they so? Why are they 7-4?
Well, I think they have a clearly defined identity, which I think is something that a lot of teams, as I watch tape, I often come away saying, what are they trying to get done on a weekly basis? Sometimes you feel that way when you watch tape. The Titans, they know who they are. They play to who they are. They're extremely physical. They're extremely competitive. Everything starts with Derrick Henry in the run game and works off that. And their defense is very, very good, and it's very physical. So they play a certain way, but you are correct. Obviously, they lost A.J. Brown, who was a difference maker. Even Corey Davis, say what you want, he never lived up to being the 5th pick in the draft, but he was a very good number 2 receiver.
Right.
So they had receivers. It's not that long ago, it was only 3 years ago, that offense averaged over 30 points a game.
Wow.
And now it seems ridiculous to even think that,
Sure.
but they did that 3 years ago, okay? They averaged over 30 points a game, and I believe that was the year they lost in the AFC Championship game to Kansas City,
Right.
if I'm not mistaken.
17-0 lead, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. But that was a year they scored a lot of points. Tannehill was the quarterback then, but obviously they've lost receivers. Now they're playing with a rookie in Treylon Burks, who we don't know what he is yet, but he has a lot of talent. Not much else. They signed Austin Hooper, but they don't really use him on a weekly basis as a as a target player. You know, he's not a guy who gets 8 or 9 targets on a weekly basis by any stretch, and people thought when they signed him, he'd be that guy. Don't you agree, Adam, when people signed him?
Yeah, you know, he's in there in 12 personnel, but he's not. Also, I think he was more of a receiver in terms of the tight end position earlier with Atlanta.
Yeah.
He wasn't, you know, he signed a big deal with Cleveland. He did not live up to it. They actually made him more of an inline blocker,
Right.
which was surprising. So, yeah, Greg's right. They
So
don't.
the other point I want to make, and then we'll talk about, we'll flush a lot of this out, but they are a very heavy, what we call 12 and 13 personnel offense, meaning 12 personnel, 1 back, 2 tight ends,
Right.
13 personnel, 1 back, 3 tight ends. Derrick Henry far and away has the most carries of any back in the league out of multiple tight end sets, and he is averaging 5 yards a carry out of multiple tight end sets.
Right.
That's the way they want to play, and then everything works off that. So the biggest issue that I've always had, and I've talked about this because I do Nashville radio and have for years, is they've often struggled to get a pass game working when the run game is not. See, I learned something from Bill Walsh very early on in my career, and I've said it numerous times. To be a great offense, and Tennessee's not a great offense, but to be a great offense, your pass game and run game have to be able to work independently from one another on any given Sunday, because you never know what the defense is going to give you and what they're going to take away.
Right.
If one is dependent on the other, then you start having problems. And their pass game and run game cannot work at this moment in time independently of one another.
Interesting. Let's also, Adam, talk about the coaching staff there.
Yeah.
Mike Vrabel, obviously one of the better coaches in the NFL. Do you feel like we are sort of watching a guy who is maybe 10 to 12 years from now is going to be regarded as one of the best who's done it?
The thing
I know he hasn't won anything, but
well, they were the number 1 seed last year with so many injuries.
Yep.
right.
And they got off to a bad start last year. It was probably that Seattle game. You and I talked about this Friday. Where they were down 24-9 at halftime. For the life of me, they didn't throw the football. They ran it, and they ran it down Seattle's throat, and they won the game.
I remember that. They came out and they ran the
was
football, and
crazy.
you're thinking, I remember watching the tape.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go,
I remember
you
watching
remember-
the tape and thinking, it's 24-9.
Why
They're
don't you
running
throw
the
the
football.
Right, that's
but
what's
that's
the
who they
shocker.
are.
Right.
Yeah.
So to use a phrase from my friend Sterling Sharp, they play to their identity.
Yeah.
Right.
This is what Mike Vrabel wants, and they're not going to stray from it. And I give their staff credit for hanging in there. Greg just outlined their offensive talent not very good. They've lost a lot of players. Robert Woods they traded. We're going to talk about him later.
Right.
They're finding ways to score. It's hard for them. You'll see Derrick Henry in the screen game a little bit. But the bottom line is they play to who they are. Tough physical defense, and getting back to Vrabel, he's an excellent coach.
Yeah.
And they really rally whenever things are down. When everyone starts saying, "Oh, that's it. This is the year that they're not going to do it." They turn their season around. That loss, Greg will remember this, week 2 at Buffalo was ugly.
Ugly.
They got smoked, and yet they went on a winning streak after that.
Yeah.
And you know, I think the bottom line point is when things are bad for them, Jeff, they just play the way they play. Like people might say, oh, they lost a game, they're going to change. They're not going to change. They're going to come out today and they're going to try to run the ball and be physical and play to who they are.
Right.
Because that's the way they're coached all year long, beginning with OTAs.
Sure.
Now, that doesn't mean, look, Tannehill's had a few games in recent weeks where he has thrown over 30 balls. I don't want to give the people impression he's going to throw 5 times.
Right.
But they're not a passing team in a strict sense.
Sure.
Everything really does start with Derrick Henry.
Let's flip this around to the Eagles as we take a big picture look. Adam, they are 10-1. It is very difficult to really talk about some of their deficiencies without sounding nitpicky. However, there's been run defensive issues all going back to last year, special teams issues clearly, and lately in the last 3 or 4 games, they're starting to put the ball on the ground a lot more than they used to. What is your biggest concern about, if you were to pick one, about the Eagles at 10-1?
I'm going to start from the bottom. I'm not someone who really worries about run defense much. I remember talking to Bill Polian about this. He's told the story about the year when the worst run defense in the National Football League.
Yes.
So they reduced what they were asking the players to do, and
Yes.
they were fine. They won the Super Bowl.
And
that
then
year.
Bob Sanders, by the way, came back, and they
That
became
helped
a
too.
very good run defense. But
No,
yes.
but he said they reduced. Tony Dungy decided, let's give them less to do, not more.
Right.
Because sometimes when things aren't good, coaches give them more to do. No,
Right.
they reduced it.
Right.
I would be worried about the kickoff coach because what's happening now is when you give the opponent the ball in plus territory, they need fewer first downs. It's easier for them to get in field goal range. And you're going to keep your defense on the field in a bad position. So to me, that's a real problem. This last game was absurd. That was an embarrassment.
Right.
They're very lucky that Green Bay decided not to show up against the run.
Yeah.
But you're not going to be playing Green Bay every week.
Yeah, it's funny, Greg. I think of some of every year, at least one game and maybe more become infamous in the playoffs.
Right.
For great teams, and the Packers are, this is ironic that the Eagles just played the Packers. Great teams that lose games in the playoffs because of a special teams breakdown.
Right.
Whether it's a missed field goal, an onside kick you didn't recover, a kickoff coverage breakdown that led to a field goal in the last second for the other team. It happens every year.
It's funny, and Jay could probably, now that Jay's here, by the way.
If I could just say, this has got to be a record for somebody coming back from PHL Airport here, anywhere to get out on time. Congratulations, Jason Avant, for just making it
good job.
in the first 20 minutes of the show.
I didn't know you could still run a 4.6.
I barely ran it in.
He ran from the airport. He ran from the airport.
I was going to make a joke about running through the airport, and I'm like,
no, that's probably not a good idea.
Do it.
But you know, I am by no means a special teams guy, so I want to say that.
Or a guru.
No, but this is just a broad look.
But I always feel that if you have a really good team, and I think the Eagles for the most part have a really good team. You know, I know A.J. Brown's put the ball on the ground twice in the last 2 weeks. You know, I would look at those as aberrations more than what's going to happen on a weekly basis. I always feel like special teams in a playoff game, if you're a really good team and a solid team, that you should just let special teams happen. In other words, not try to be special. Like, you know, you don't have to return a kickoff, 80 yards. You don't have to have a punt return touchdown. You know, just let your special teams do what they do and then play because you're a good team. Now, special team coaches will probably tell me I'm wrong, but that's always the way I feel, because what you just said always strikes me when I'm watching playoff games, that a team has special teams gaffes that and costs them the game when they're trying to do something beyond just like the normal.
Right.
You know, because everybody, because guys want to make plays and be heroes.
Yeah.
You know, so again, I could be totally wrong, but I just remember years ago that happened with the 49ers in the playoffs. I think Williams, the wide receiver, Williams, had
against the Giants.
Against the
Giants.
Had two muff punts.
At home.
Yeah. He had catching itches as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And by the way, I mean, literally, I probably was
I don't know
10
why that
years
just popped into my head,
No,
but it just did.
That's a great game to bring up. That's Giants 49ers, which in the playoffs, I think about 10 years before that, became very infamous for the long snapper, just not
Trey
Junkin.
Right.
Yeah. And then the Packers, they had the Seattle Seahawks done the year that the Seahawks went to the Super Bowl for the second straight year.
Was that the game where Wilson threw like 4 or 5 picks?
It was, and the third string tight end botched one of a very kickoff, and then Seattle got the ball, went back and scored.
Right.
Remember the Packers just over the last years, they fired their special teams coach because they were
last
so
year
bad.
alone they missed a field goal. They missed they had a kick blocked, and then they gave up a very long kickoff return that led to the game tying field goal.
Jason, it's so noticeable. You as a former player, what is your view on when the special teams are bad? Can it be fixed in season?
So special teams is a result of coaching. Like, it's all coaching, because you have to establish that, first of all, you need fast guys and you need tough guys, like really tough. These are people, like today, this game, the Tennessee Titans team is a tough team.
Yep.
They force you to bow up. They force you to not play a game that you can be passive. You have to attack them. And that's the mentality of all special teams units. The good ones are max effort, they're fast, and they're tough. There's not all three of those things happening with our unit. Now, the other thing I'll say is that you need good players. And usually starters, fringe starters, guys that should be on the field, they pop on special teams. Throughout the history of the NFL, we knew the guys that when they got an opportunity on defense, that they were going to shine because they kicked butt on special teams.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember James Harrison being so intimidating on special teams that guys didn't want to go down at the kickoff position when he was on kickoff return.
Right.
Right? We called him Debo because he would lock one person up, keep him at the 50-yard line. Like, those are the types of things that pop out. Quinn Michael the same way. Kick butt. Cole Anderson the same way. They kick butt. Jason Short the same way. This is a group of people, and you got to want special teams.
Yes.
If you're a team that's like, special team is just out there, it's a part, you have to want it. And that mentality has to start at the beginning of the season. So you're not, to your point, at the end of the season trying to create some momentum.
All right, say no more, because we have a whole thing about special teams we're going to get into, because
I got a lot of questions
part
on
of
that.
it. We have questions for it. Speaking of special teams,
Jason will discuss that. That's not my area.
speaking of special
You
teams,
don't watch the tape?
There's only so many hours in the day.
You may have to throw you a couple hundred to look at that.
Right.
speaking of special teams, Jason, as you might have seen my text last night, Purdue kicking field goals down 2 touchdowns going into the fourth quarter.
Bizarre.
That's sort of head scratching to me.
Yeah,
but,
still
hey,
down
you know.
2 scores.
You know what they say? Good teams win, great teams cover. Apparently, Jeff Brohm thought that as well. All right, let's get into the injuries. There are plenty of them for both sides in this Eagles-Titans game. We'll start off with the Eagles. Good news for them. We think Jordan Davis activated yesterday, Saturday, onto the 53-man roster. So that means he should play today. I think the big question would be, guys, is, you know, with that injury, the high ankle, a guy of his size, even though he said he lost 20 pounds while on IR, how many snaps can he hold up today for the Eagles, who need as many good run defenders as possible? So how many snaps will he be able to play? Jason, I mean, I know you're not a 350-pound nose tackle, but coming off a high ankle, do you have any kind of feel for what you expect from him today?
I couldn't imagine being that big and being able to move around. But again, moving forward and controlling the gap, I'm pretty sure that's a little bit easier than running routes full speed and trying to cut on it.
True.
So that's the only thing I can say about it. Like, I'm sure that they're not going to activate him with being 10-1.
Yeah.
And he's not ready to go.
Right.
Because there's really no point, especially when you got a lot of guys that have come in and that's doing the job okay enough to win games.
Sure. And then this will be their first game where they're able to play both Jordan Davis and Linval Joseph interchangeably, you would think, to be able to have those
Very
guys.
quick point, we'll get into this more, but they're playing a team, as I said, that's going to play multiple tight end sets a lot, so they're going to be in their 5-man base front a lot.
Yes.
So they want both Davis and Joseph to be able to play.
Right, but very doubtful they'd be on the field at the same time, unless one of them moves to a 3
I would think not.
Yeah, I would think not either.
Because Sue's still there, so.
There you go. All right. Obviously, safety, C.J. Gardner-Johnson. He did wind up going on IR. Adam, we talked about this. It's the lacerated kidney, but there's also rib stuff going on, and he's going to now obviously be out for 4 games.
Yeah, it's interesting. So Sirianni did say this week, because there was some debate, when should they put him on IR? I mean, it would still be in week 13 if they did it this week. They did. But he did say that he was getting additional testing. They were waiting to get that back.
Right.
And obviously it wasn't good enough, so he's out for 4 games. So the strange thing is, if he's cleared by week 17, because that's when he could be eligible to come off IR, who are they playing? The Saints.
Oh, how
here
about
in
that?
Philly, so he would be playing his former team. And by the way, they're the team that decided they didn't want to extend his contract.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, look now, we'll get into the matchups and how Tennessee could certainly throw against them in this matchup. But yeah, Gardner-Johnson now out for 4 games, and that's going to change things starting from a full-time basis today.
And he may be able to get extra rest because, as you mentioned, coming off in week 17, depending on how the Eagles do over the next 4 weeks, that game might not matter as much to the Eagles.
Yeah,
Right.
That's
if
true.
they rest starters,
That's true.
he's probably going to get yet another week of rest
He would.
before going into the playoffs. And then maybe even if they're the number 1 seed,
He gets another week of rest.
Week of rest.
There's only one seed.
All right.
There's only one team that gets a bye. By the way.
Right.
Sort of, not, I don't want to say it's surprise news, but also out today is Robert Quinn, not with the back injury that we have been discussing over the last 2 weeks, but a knee injury, I believe, that is keeping him out for this game. Look, everybody applauded the move. It made sense to go get him, but it's a move that has not worked out well
Not
for
at
the Eagles
all.
so
No.
far.
This is another one. So he had the back,
Yep.
which you had said that it was not a result of practice. He actually it was an issue from a previous game.
Person could tell that he definitely, even before he was on the injury report with a back injury, which happened on the Thursday, that the prior game, which I think was the second game against Washington, lost. Person who watched the tape said to me, he does not look right.
No,
he looks like he's favoring things.
I thought he
and-
was dragging his one leg a little bit, to be honest with you, and maybe that is the knee injury. You know,
Well, it was
he just looked-
at that time they were
Yeah.
just saying back,
right.
You know, but
well, back could do that too.
I was going to say one thing
Anything
leads
with
to
your
another.
core affects everything in your body.
Right.
It's hard to believe that he wasn't hurt coming here.
Yeah.
If he was hurt coming here, how did he pass the physical?
Right.
Well, I
yeah.
would say, couldn't you? You could have things wrong with you, chronic things that would not show up in a physical, right? But would show up if you're asked to play 30 to 40 snaps in a game, and
Yeah. Because when in the physical, they're looking for structural damage, like
Right.
ligament tear, stuff like that.
Right.
And they also have all of your medical records, so I'm pretty sure that they thought that it would be manageable.
Right. Like, let's say you're arthritic. You have an arthritic hand or an arthritic knee.
Yeah.
I'm bringing this up as a hypothetical. That's not something that necessarily show up, right, on a scan.
Well, they'll have history. There's
Right.
always history because if you go into the tent and or come off the field for anything, there's documentation for the ailments that you may have.
Sure.
Right? So it's all about risk and reward at that point. They're saying, okay, arthritic hand, I've seen guys play through it. Maybe something else that we don't want to chance it. Oh, it's Liz Frank. I don't want to chance that.
Right.
So during the COVID year, he had a very significant foot injury.
Right. I
There were
remember
rumors
that.
about drop foot. It was denied by the Bears, but it was a bad injury. He was never right. He got over the injury. We saw he was incredible last year. But there's something you would have to think. You guys are correct, I believe. There was something going on with his body before he got
Before,
there. Maybe it didn't show. It wasn't listed on the injury report.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're not dealing with
I
something.
just thought he
Yeah.
couldn't push off. This was just my sense of watching the tape
Yep.
because when you mentioned it to me a couple of weeks ago, hey, let's talk about Robert Quinn, I really made it a point to look at him, and I just thought he was dragging a little.
Did he look stiff?
Yes.
Upright,
and
like
yes,
as a rusher?
and he normally doesn't look like that when
No,
he's at his
that's-
best.
Yeah, he's a bender.
He's a bender.
that's not
Yeah.
good.
So I thought something was physically, and I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to sit here and say what it is.
Right.
But he just didn't look like he could. He looked stiff, and he looked like he couldn't bend the way you normally see him.
Well, I mean, the Eagles, they gave up a 4th-round pick. It's not the biggest investment in the world, but, they were looking for somebody to help their pass rush, and clearly
Well, maybe after a week
he's
or
not
two
been
he'll be
able to
better.
do it.
We'll
The
find
hope
out.
is
Maybe he
obviously
will. Yeah.
with all these guys by the playoffs, this is when you really need this guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Because
Right.
And he does not have to play 40 snaps.
no,
Right.
2025.
So the inactives will come out later, but because Robert Quinn is out, the question was, with Jordan Davis being active today, are they really going to have 6 defensive tackles active? You don't need them, but
True.
perhaps Milton Williams, who can also play some defensive end, will make some defensive end snaps or with Robert Quinn out, a way to keep him